I am going to give it about 30 more seconds, give folks a chance to get on. Randa, can you see my screen?
I cannot. Oh, yep. Yes, I can. Sorry.
Great, thank you. Yeah, just did something weird, but all right, well, we're going to go ahead and get started. You are attending a grant readiness workshop for the Energy Transition Community Grant. My name is Amanda Panca. I work for Prairie Rivers Network. We are an environmental nonprofit in Illinois. We have worked for decades on issues of pollution in across Illinois, particularly when it comes to the way we produce energy. And so, as our state energy sector is transitioning, we recognize that it's just not environmental impacts from this transition. And so, we've been working on this program as well as a lot of other um, initiatives related to supporting coal communities in this energy transition. So, let's take a quick look at our agenda for the day. I just have a couple introduction slides just to share a bit of background about this grant program and make sure you're all in the right place, that it makes sense for you to listen in. Then I'm going to hand it over to Matthew Swain, who's with the Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. They are the grant administrators for the grant, and he's going to go through a presentation overviewing the grant. We're going to then hear from Courtney Breckenridge with Fueling Growth Group. Courtney had experience supporting some communities last year in their grant process. She has some lessons learned to share and has also put together some templates, like letters of support, things like that, that folks can use to make their lives easier next year. So we hear from Courtney. I'm going to then briefly touch on a few other pieces about this grant, as well as some other opportunities for energy communities. And then finally, we'll have about 15 minutes for questions and answers. So let's take a really quick background look at this grant. So this is the Energy Transition Community Grant Program. It was created by a state law that passed in 2021 called the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act. That law created the grant program and it allowed the state to collect money from ratepayers to go into a pot of money that then would be distributed out in the form of this grant. But before that time, before that law passed, it didn't just miraculously appear in the law. There was years of effort from organizations like mine, many coal community leaders, other advocates to help tell state lawmakers, policymakers that this energy transition was going to impact certain communities differently and that those communities should have extra support to navigate the transition. So we work to bring coal communities together, to meet with the governor's staff who is working on policies, to meet with policymakers within coalitions that environmental groups like mine work in, to help inform that law. And so this grant program was one of the products of that effort to get coal communities and coal community leaders and members in that policymaking process. So the law said certain things about the grant program, but DCEO was in charge of creating it and administering it. So in the summer of 2022, DCEO put out a request for information, giving another chance for coal impacted coal communities to give input on how they develop that grant program. And many of you on the call helped submit information to DCEO. In that process, we saw them put out the first NOFO in December of 2022, which kicked off the 2023 grant program. that was the first year of the grant program. Then our second year started this January. And then we are expecting DCEO. So we had another one in January 2024, and then we are expecting DCEO to put out another notice of funding opportunity this coming January. And so this will continue to be a yearly grant program to support energy communities. So let's make sure you're in the right spot so you don't waste the next hour of your day. Is this grant right for you? If you live near a fossil fuel plant, so a coal plant or a gas plant, or a coal mine that has closed in the last 6 years or is planned to close in the next 6 years, this grant might be right for you. If you're a local unit of government in the area, and if you're located within 30 miles of the plant or mine. So that is who is eligible for the grant. A couple other things to keep in mind about eligibility as we get going here, and you'll probably hear some of this again from Matthew in his presentation, but I just wanted to share it up front. You must be in good standing in the state Grant Accountability and Transparency Act portal to apply for this grant. If you're a small community and you're not, you can partner, and we'll hear more about this, you can partner with other communities that are in the GATA portal and have joint applications. And then finally, you're going to hear more about this too, but you must have a letter of support to apply for this grant from what's considered the host of the plant or mine. And this is typically defaults to the county. So for example, the Joppa coal plant closed in Massac County. If you're a unit of government in Massac County or within 30 miles, you would need a letter of support from Massac County to apply. So just a couple things to keep in mind up front on, is this grant right for you? Are you in the right place today participating in this workshop? So that's kind of just my framing to get us started. I'm going to go ahead and hand it over to Matthew to talk about the grant program.
While she's setting up, hello everyone. My name is Matt Swain. I am from the Illinois Department of Commerce and Economic Opportunity. I'm with the Office of Energy and Business Utility, and one of my main grants that I focus on is the Energy Transition Community Grant. So I ended up personally taking over this grant midway through 2024. I took it over in May. So I kind of missed out on phase one of the grant. I took it over from phase two on and just kind of let it through to where it is now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go next slide, please. I'm going to go ahead and go through the agenda. So we'll just do a quick little overview, go through where the funding comes from, applicant eligibility, which I know Amanda already hit on, but I'm going to hit that again. The eligible plant or mines, as well as what the phased approach actually means, because this is a two-phased process for this grant. There is a phase one and phase two. I'll go through the award formula, which is how we determine the allocation amounts for each of our applicants, and then go through some of the eligible projects, as well as provide a not set in stone timeline, but a brief timeline, just so you guys kind of get a general idea of the timeline for you guys, as well as some additional resources and then some contact information for you guys to stay up to date. Next slide, please. So the overview of the grant is the goal is to provide grants to support economic development in communities impacted by a closure or reduced operation of fossil fuel power plant, coal mine, or nuclear power plant. So I know earlier Amanda had said closed. There are situations where plants will reduce their operation. For example, here in Springfield, CWLP, they've actually reduced their operation quite a bit since 2021, which ends up making them eligible for this grant. There are a few other exceptions like that, and I have a full list that we'll get to in a minute. But here is the actual CEJA law. This is where you can find the energy transition funds and exactly where this grant is in legislation. Next slide, please.
And Matthew, my rural internet is very slow, so it just might take me a second to get your next slide up, but trust that I'm moving them along.
I gotcha. Thank you. Um, so the funding source from this grant comes from the Energy Transition Funds, and the total amount in the NOFO is $40 million. And the award range, the minimum is $50,000. And then so the minimum is $50,000, and whether or not you get more or less, or not less, excuse me, you either get more of that money or not is just because of the formula that we have that I'll go through in another slide later on. So this past year, we had about 50, for 2024, we had about 58 applicants receive awards for this grant. And I'm hopefully expecting more for 2025. There is no matching requirements. There are pre-award costs are allowed, and there are not any indirect costs allowed for this. Next slide, please. So again, who is eligible? Local units of government, including municipalities, counties, school districts, and other taxing districts within 30 miles of a closed plant or closing plant or mine. So this is like some other examples that people might not always think of. Fire departments are typically eligible as well. We've worked with a couple of those, as well as like local libraries. Those are also eligible because they're in those taxing districts. The plant or mine must have closed or will significantly reduce operation within 6 years before the application, or will be retired or have service significantly reduced within 6 years following the application for designation. So there is in the NOFO that will be released next year, there will be an updated list of plants and mines that are eligible. Right now, you can actually go to the next slide. Right now, the list that I have provided at the moment is actually from 2024's NOFO. I have to wait myself for IDNR and IEPA to provide updates on closing mines or plants in Illinois. So the only one here that would not be eligible for next year is the Red Hawk mine at the very top, because their window that 6-year window has actually closed. So anything from 2019 through 2024 is currently in that 6-year window. So I'll let this slide sit for a minute, and then we can go to the next slide and look at the couple. Oh, there we go. And then so here are a couple other additional ones. And so as you can see here, there are Springfield for CWLP. It's a significant reduction, not an official closure, which makes them officially active, or makes the host city able to receive this grant. And then as you can see, we've got already a few power plants that are closing within the next few years, and those counties will eventually be eligible as those years come up. Next slide, please. So the phased approach, and for some of you, I recognized a few names on here that have gone through this process. This is going to be a little bit of a review, but if you're new here, this is perfect. So we break this up into phase 1 and phase 2. So in phase 1, local governments that meet program eligibility requirements will provide an application to the department that provides basic information about the entity and their eligibility. After all the phase 1 applications have been received, DCO will identify whether each phase 1 applicant is eligible and determine the amount of funds that each entity is eligible for according to an award formula. So phase 1 is very, very easy. It's very easy to apply, and I want everybody to know it's not super cumbersome. There's a phase 1 application. I believe it's only 5 or 6 questions. It's very brief. It's a uniform grant application, which isn't very hard to fill out either. And then there's the mandatory disclosure and conflict of interest form. So the biggest thing for phase one, and Amanda already kind of touched on it, is getting letters of support from the host city or county. This is huge because the lead applicant or lead entity is the host city or county. So they have first right of refusal to apply for this grant. And essentially, they have to give their letter of support or a blessing, however you want to say it, in order for your entity to be able to be eligible. So let's say, for example, I'll use Springfield. So CWLP, so City of Springfield is actually the host city. So if Lincoln Lane Community College, if they want to be an eligible applicant, they actually have to reach out to City of Springfield if they want to use CWLP as their eligibility. They have to reach out for them, receive that letter of support from them in order to be able to apply for phase one. So, and then once we get through phase one, we determine all of the eligible applicants. We'll then use that award formula to determine allocations. Then we will send out a letter to each applicant, whether or not you've been denied or if you're receiving an award amount, and it'll give you an allocation, let's say $200,000, something along those lines. Next slide, please. So then once you receive that letter and it's got your allocation amount, it's not guaranteed that you're going to receive that allocation amount because we still need some more information. We need to know a little bit more about your project. We also we need to have a uniform budget as well as a project timeline, and then the stakeholder engagement process. So really that's just reaching out to your community, getting some community input on what to use the funds for. And then there's some requirements within the stakeholder engagement form, like you have to hit a certain amount of different groups of individuals. Off the top of my head, I know you have to hit like an educational groups as well as like local municipalities as well, to be able to receive input from them in order to apply for this. So that is phase two. And then with phase two, after you submit all your materials, you'll then have a couple weeks for DCEO to review all the projects, go through everything, and then we'll go through and give you an approval letter saying, yes, your project has been approved. And then from there, we'll start the process on our internal ends to be able to get you that award money and to issue a NOSA. Next slide, please. So I keep mentioning the formula. Well, here's the actual formula that we use. So first you start out with, if you're an eligible applicant, you're getting $50,000. Then we use two factors to determine how much additional money you receive. So that's the job loss factor and then the revenue loss factor. So the total amount allocated for job loss and revenue loss is 1/3 and 2/3 respectively of funds available beyond the minimum $50,000 for each eligible entity. And then just for joint application, this will be separately determined for every government entity and then summed up together to make one big pot, essentially. Next slide, please. So a lot of questions that we receive are, what are some eligible projects? So the biggest thing that I always tell people is grants must be used to plan for or address the economic and social impact on the community or region of plan or mine retirement or transition. And so I'm not going to lie, the use of these funds are very, very broad. You can use it for a ton of different projects. So we'll have energy efficiency projects. We had a marketing project this past year. We even had pickleball project that somebody did. I mean, there's lots of different projects that are available. So these are the different things that you can do. So you can do capacity building, use consultants or professional services. You can do an energy efficiency project. You can upskill and do workforce development projects. We had a lot of those this year as well. You can provide financial assistance for unemployed, underemployed, or low-income residents. Public infrastructure investment, that's a big one as well. Site cleanup, environmental remediation. Next slide, please. Grants incentivize relocation and retention of companies. That's a big one as well. Marketing already touched on, affordable housing, downtown commercial redevelopment, planning, or investment in local or regional operational capacity. So those are really all of so it's a broad list. So we always get questions, hey, is my project eligible? If you ever have questions, we'll get to it at the end, but my email is going to be on here. Please reach out, send me an email, and I will make sure to let you know, yay or nay, whether or not that project is eligible. Next slide, please. So this is a brief timeline that I put together. It's not set in stone. As you know, we are a government, so sometimes things can move a little slower. But this is kind of the flow or the timeline that it's taken for 2024, and we're hoping to hit on for 2025. So in Q1, we're hoping to have the NOFO posted, as well as the phase 1 application deadline. Q2, that'll be the reviewing of all the phase 1 applications, and then the invitations to apply for phase 2. So that'll be those award letters that have allocation amounts that'll be sent out. And then finally, Q3, that's when the phase 2 application deadline is. Then we'll review those phase 2 applications, project approval letter, and then the next steps from there, which is issuing that NOSA and getting you guys that award money. Next slide, please. So a big thing I just wanted to touch on before I end kind of my session is there are tons of additional resources. I can't tell you how many applicants were denied in phase 1 of this past year for just having simple things like their GATA not up to date, or their SAM.gov, or they're not in good standing with Secretary of State. So really, if you're going to apply, please, please, please take the 30 minutes it takes to go through each of these different resources. Make sure your GATA portal is all set up. Make sure your SAM.gov is open and that you have a UEI number. Make sure that you're in good standing with Illinois Secretary of State. Because I do not want to have to deny somebody in phase 1 and then you have to wait an entire year, and now you're losing one of those 6 years that you can be eligible for this grant because of something super simple that's easily fixable. So please use these resources. I'll have Amanda send these slides out so that you guys can have them and that you guys can take a look and make sure all of your stuff are up to date. Next slide, please. And the biggest thing I like to say is subscribe. People always ask me, hey, Matt, when is the NOFO going to be released? When are we going to be able to start working on our applications, do all that? Unfortunately, I do not have a set in stone timeline. It kind of just depends on how fast we're able to get through the NOSAs from the previous year, get those out to everybody before we can issue out the NOFO for next year. So what I always tell people is subscribe. You can send a blank email to the subscribe OMB GATA grants at list.illinois.gov, and they will send you a weekly email distribution with all the notice of funding opportunities that open up. so then you can stay up to date and make sure that you're able to get that NOFO and start working on that application and everything. Next slide, please. And then finally, we're here for you. The whole point of this grant is we want to give this money out. We want to be able to help out as many communities as possible. So please, 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 if you have questions, if you have anything, if you're not sure of, I'd like to say there's no stupid questions. Please reach out. I monitor the CEO.CJA.com transition email. I also monitor my own personal email as well. If you have a quick question, please send me an email. I'll respond as quick as I can because I want to make sure that I'm here for you guys. So take a screenshot, take a picture, write down the emails, whatever you guys need to do. And then, yeah, that's all I got.
Great. Thank you so much, Matthew. And as he mentioned, we'll make sure that his slides get sent around. So all these helpful links and email addresses are at your fingertips. And so I'm going to let Courtney share her screen. Again, Courtney Breckenridge helped a group of communities successfully apply for this grant last year. And so Prairie Rivers Network has brought her on to share some information with you today and put some resources together to help with your grant application. So take it away, Courtney.
Courtney, you're on mute.
Thank you. You can do a lot of things, but apparently manage Zoom is not always one of them. I want to start with a question in the chat, which I think is very on point with kind of the spirit of this conversation today. So Mike from Logan County asked if a county can apply more than once, meaning could they apply for a grant to improve a road and then a grant to support food pantries, two divergent purposes in two applications rather than one. And I think, and please, Matthew in particular, from DCEO's perspective, your application can be a package of individualized projects. And so let's just use big round numbers here. Let's say that Logan County did a collaborative application with a number of different entities. You could have smaller individual projects that are funding things like roads or food pantries or a business boot camp, or other types of projects that your community might recommend or dream up, and be able to roll those all into a single application.
Yes.
And so that's a big part of what we're going to talk about today during my couple minutes here. Okay. I do want to start by saying, for anyone on this call who's been in the grant world or previously applied or is really seriously looking at this, this is one of the greatest opportunities I have ever seen in terms of community-facing grants. Huge kudos to Prairie Rivers Network, to DCEO, to the stakeholders who took time to share information and inspiration, as this was being drafted, released, and rolled out. This is not a competitive grant program. It is a compliance grant program. So if you are eligible and you complete the fairly basic administrative tasks that Matthew described around GATA portals and ensuring that you're in good standing, your community is going to be eligible for this money. That is almost never the case. And so, if you're on the fence about this, I would really encourage everyone to take advantage of the resources that Amanda and Matthew and myself are willing to provide to make it happen, because it is very unusual in the land of grants and presents a great opportunity to get something started and then have continued funding in future years, or to be able to invest that funding to continue to pursue additional opportunities through working with consultants or investing in capacity building. So this is a tiny bit repetitive. from what we've already presented. It's really important information, so I'm going to continue to go through it, but hopefully with some specific examples to help contextualize it. So lead applicant, in a lot of cases, you're looking at one application. There can be multiple. We'll talk about that in a second. But eligible lead applicants are pretty straightforward. You're either the host community, so the address affiliated with the closed plant or mine, or you are a local unit of not a local unit of government within 30 miles that has received approval from the host community to apply. That's it. Those are the only two eligible applicants. You either host the plant or you've received permission from the plant to submit a separate application. So this information will be captured, put together a little bit of an infographic that Amanda will have on the Prairie Rivers site to help walk through for each of the individual types of lead applicants what that means. So I feel like host community is the most straightforward of these. Again, if you are an other local unit of government, a municipality, a county, school district, Lincoln Land was a great example, but also library districts, you are eligible for a grant under or a grant or a project under this as long as you are cooperating with or receiving permission from the host community. What I really want to talk about is collaboration.
I'm
And the
I'm on a
go ahead.
Zoom call. No problem.
Okay, what I want to talk about primarily is collaboration. What do these multi-partner proposals look like? And this can be collaborative whether you are all under a single project, a single budget, or a series of individual projects that go together. And I'll give an example of each here. So the host community, let's just talk about Macoupin County here for a minute. So the Shea number 1 mine in Macoupin County has had significantly reduced operations, has been idled, making the 30-mile radius eligible. So there were a handful of different types of proposals that went in from this community last year. One is led by the host community, and it is so Macoupin County is the applicant. They are the sole applicant, and they are investing in a series of capacity building activities to help support future growth of not just the county board and county government itself, but the broader region. So they have discrete projects like fixing road signs, supporting a local CEO program, and then also more of an investment in county-wide capacity building and infrastructure through the establishment of a grants and economic development office. So that's all under a single proposal, the host community as the applicant. In this case, the host community also provided letters of support to other organizations that were eligible to apply. And so the city of Gillespie did a ton of outreach with other smaller municipalities, taxing bodies in their area. Each of those local governments that came to the table and provided, the required letter of support has a distinct, unique project under a single application. And so whether it's updating to some energy efficiency, investment in tourism, and helping through the digitization of county coal mine newspaper clippings, etc. Each of those projects comes together and rolls up into a single larger project. So there's a lot of different ways to approach this in terms of how big you want to dream. And, I think that there's a big opportunity for that here in terms of, the whole spirit of this grant is a closed plant means reduced revenues for local government. And so there may be immediate stopgap needs that your community would like to apply these funds for. There's also an opportunity to invest in longer term capacity building or cost savings measures to help grow the economy and recover. Again, there's a lot of folks invested in supporting communities in this, making the most of it. And so, if Amanda isn't already your best friend, you should probably make her so over the next couple of months. because you're not alone in this in terms of thinking about what you want to do, how you want to structure it, bouncing off ideas. There are teams in place to help be supportive of you and your community in applying for this. So if you are checking out, and I'm guessing there's a link in the presentation somewhere in the chat, the Prairie Rivers Network website, not only is there information and descriptions about this, but Amanda and her team have put together a number of different resources to help you through the process of applying. I've written a ton of grants to all different types of agencies over the years, USDA, EPA, DCEO, et cetera. This is one of the most doable grants that your community could ever invest in. And so highly encourage you to take advantage of the opportunity to collaborate or determine your path to applying, whether that's as a host community, a non-host community, or through a collaborative proposal. So moving forward, just a second, a couple of strategies, a couple of things to keep in mind if you're planning to go into this through either stage one or phase two. Matthew said it, I'll say it again, completing the pre-qualification steps in the GATA portal, making sure that you check those very straightforward administrative boxes. Do you have an account? Are you in good standing? Have you completed your ICQ or internal control questionnaire? If you have questions on those things, there are help numbers and resources available to you. Please use them. If you're a host community, I would say start thinking now about how you're going to handle those requests for letters of support or resolution. Do you want to hand those out to other eligible entities? Do you want to include them within a collaborative proposal under your application? Or do you want to not have them at all? That is an option as well. If you're a non-host community applicant, if you're the library district and you want to apply for funding, start talking to the host community now and assessing their support, because you're going to need their letter or the resolution from their board. Before this thing is even dropped, there's a lot of information from last year that will be fairly consistent, most likely. So starting to think about those projects and partners. How are you going to engage with the community in terms of public input? There is a set of required outreach for community engagement in the phase two portion that if you're thinking about early, it becomes a lot less daunting. And then once you've completed a phase one application, continuing to move forward in between when phase one and phase two are announced. As we get to phase two, and if you're submitting in phase one, I'm guessing that Amanda or myself, you'll be hearing from us in the interim, but just thinking ahead a little bit, thinking about project planning. If you want to support food pantries and fix a local road, what are you doing it? Who is doing it? How much is it going to cost? Are these activities allowable? How are they framed in such a way to fit within the priorities of the grant? Asking those questions now is helpful. And again, there'll be resources such as I think it says sub-award project planning as a template, but you can also use that to begin planning your own project. Again, thinking about community engagement. Who are you going to have to reach out to and document in order to submit a successful phase two application? And then if you have partners, how are you coordinating across the different sub-grantees? And of course, I always say getting a grant is not necessarily easy all of the time, but it is the easier of the two processes. If you get a grant, every time I get one, I cry. A little bit happy, a little bit sad, like, yay, we got this money, we, won an award. And then also, oh my gosh, look at all this work that we just created and all of these things that we're going to do. So think early on that front. And hopefully I'm close to time there, Amanda, but that is everything I had.
Thank you. I definitely cried the first time this grant was awarded, and I started hearing from folks that they got their award letters. I definitely cried, but I also didn't have to do all the grant administration. So mine were just happy tears, not that all the work I created for myself. Thank you so much, Courtney. And Courtney comes with a wealth of experience and is going to be at our fingertips to a limited extent to help answer questions as we all go into the 2025 grant program. I'm going to share my screen again and just I'm going to touch on a specific use of grant funds that, Courtney talked about using the grant funds for capacity building and cost reducing measures because it's a way to make the grants funds last into the future. So one of those ways that we're really excited about is potentially use, and some of you have done this, using grant funds for solar projects. And there's a couple reasons why this is a good thing right now. There are a lot of other incentives available for solar at the moment. So you're almost like creating matching funds for your energy transition community grant because it allows you to take advantage of these other incentives and programs too. And so I have listed those on this slide, and I'm happy to talk with anybody in more detail about them. There are federal tax credits that for energy communities can cover 40% of your project costs. And they can be made, tax credits typically can't be made to counties, municipalities, nonprofits, but a new program allows those tax credits to be made as elective or direct payment to tax exempt entities. So you can get the 40% tax credit for your project. The state of Illinois also has something called renewable energy credits that incentivize solar development and usually cover about 30% of project costs. So between those 40% federal tax credits, 30% state credits, and your energy transition community grant, you can pretty much get large solar projects paid for. And so this is an investment that then pays back over time. You're going to start saving on your monthly electricity bills. That's going to free up money monthly that then can be reinvested back into the community over time. So I always want to put that plug in just because of the really great other incentives available at this moment. It's an important time to take advantage. Happy to talk to anybody more about that. I just wanted to summarize some of the resources we've talked about today. And I will actually take Matthew's slides. He shared a couple other links on the GATA portal and making sure you're in great standing. I'll add those all in here. So that first block is kind of your DCEO resources for this grant. And then that second block is the new website that we created that includes a fact sheet about the grant, a link to last year's phase 1 NOFO. So if you want to get a sneak peek at what the NOFO is going to look like when it comes out early next year, we have last year's up as an example. We're creating a frequently asked questions document that we have already added some questions to. As we get more in the chat today, we'll continue to inform that document. And also on this site, with Courtney's help, we have put again together some example templates of those host support letters and other things. So I put that in the chat. We'll make sure it comes out in a follow-up email. I did want to just briefly show y'all the fact sheet that we keep updated. This is currently based on last year's grant program. I will update it as soon as the 2025 NOFO comes out. I find this fact sheets very helpful. As you all now, some of you have done this before, your county board members, your mayors and city council folks already know all about it. If you are new to the grant program or you have newly elected folks, this fact sheet's a great place to start, to bring to meetings, pass around, and walk through the high levels of the grant program before you dive in deeper. So that, again, is linked on that website that I shared. And then kind of taking a broader look, I'm not going to spend much time here because the purpose of today is the Energy Transition Community Grant Program. But there are a lot of other resources and initiatives out there right now targeted at supporting communities that are impacted by the energy transition. So also new to the Prairie Rivers Network website is this page. And it includes the very first thing is this grant program, but then there's other initiatives like a displaced energy worker dependent scholarship program that was also created by the same energy law, the Climate and Equitable Jobs Act, that provides scholarships to the dependents of laid off energy workers. So as coal plants and coal mines close, the dependents of those workers can get scholarships to schools. And we've seen some families take advantage of this. So that's just one example. Encourage folks to also check out this website, click through these different things, see what might be right for you. If you're not sure which of these is relevant to your community, feel free to reach out to me. I'd love to hop on a Zoom call with you and kind of talk through these. We have lots of communities that have taken advantage from some of these. Peoria area group got a grant from the Just Transition Fund to do some broadband studies. Mark Kina, who's on the call, has participated in this Building Resilient Economies and Coal Communities initiative from the National Association of Counties. So we have some lessons learned from community members in Illinois. Something else I'd also love to continue to talk with everybody about is, most of you on this call live in a community that has a closed plant or mine. Are there other opportunities to bring folks together for lessons learned, capacity building, things like that? So if you ever need a connection to another community that's navigated something similar, I'm happy to help make those connections. I know downstate Illinois is a small world. Y'all probably know each other anyway, but I'm happy to help. I also wanted to introduce the rest of my team. We have actually a staff of 5 now working on energy issues. My coworker, Andrew, who's not even listed here, he's an expert on coal ash. So if you're in a power plant community and you have questions about coal ash, I can connect you to Andrew. Similarly, Andrew is working on new policy development. So what are the other opportunities and challenges that the state needs to address with energy policy? If you have questions about that, Andrew's your man. But Anthony and Randa, I know Randa's on the call with me today. We're kind of more like the folks working on implementing all these policies, and would love to help your community look, particularly energy and environment related opportunities. We'd love to chat. And I think that's all I had. So I'm sure I've forgotten some things, but we'll dive into the question and answer now. And I know that Courtney already touched on our question from Mike in Logan County, but Matthew, I might just give you an opportunity to speak to Mike's question about, can a county have more than one application, or if they have 2 separate projects? And again, Courtney already touched on it, but I'll let you answer it as well.
Yeah, so we'll see a lot of times people will get a large allocation amount and then they will use one application and then they'll do multiple projects within that application. So you're not doing an application per project, essentially. You're just bundling it all together. So for example, I want to say County of Peoria had, I think, 11 different projects that they were doing with their allocation amount. And so they just kept that all into one application. So you can do the same thing. No need to fill out more applications. I certainly, since I review these, I don't want to go through and have to go open up 11 different applications. I'd rather it just all be in one place. So I hope that answers your question.
Can I ask a follow-up on that? I just wanted to know if there has to be like any type of cohesion between the multiple projects, or, in the narrative of what you're putting in the grant, or is it okay to just kind of like list out different projects that don't necessarily have like an overarching overlap?
Yeah, so there's not necessarily like an overlap that needs to occur. So for example, we had a project this past year where, one of their things was redevelopment of an industrial park. That was part of their project. And then the next part of their project was they needed to use the tax money that they lost to repair a road. So it doesn't need to be similar or in the same ballpark. However, I will say that my director actually sent me a couple of Teams messages after I'd already stopped talking, and she just wanted me to to reiterate that you guys can really use your money to think about like revenue generation or increasing your tax revenue, because you only have 6 years to utilize this money. And so the goal essentially should be to try to replace the revenue you lost, and she wanted me to provide you guys some examples like an industrial park or repurposing abandoned sites, solar farms, something that's going to put money back into your pockets. So that's just something to kind of think about when deciding to do these projects.
Thank you, Matthew. Anybody else want to put questions in the chat and or come off mute and ask a question? While we're waiting, I will just reiterate that the list of eligible mines and plants that Matthew shared, as he mentioned, is from last year. So if you didn't see your plant or mine on that list, that doesn't mean it won't be included in the list in 2025. And I have also worked with some folks to provide DCO evidence and information about closures, particularly when there is a reduced operation. So folks have that sort of information and want to be proactive in communicating with DCO and IDNR about closures or partial closures. I can help you navigate that conversation. There is a formula that DCEO uses to look at reduced operations of a coal mine. So I can, well, Matthew can, and then I'm happy to also help folks look at those
Yeah, in that same kind of note, like if there's a power plant or coal mine that's not on there that I'm missing, please like email me immediately. Like Amanda's already done it. She's provided one that we missed. So we need if there's any others that are out there, because sometimes IDNR and IEPA do not provide us. They might not know, or they might not have those numbers for us readily available. So please email us, do something, because we want to make sure that we have as many of those on that list as possible.
Any other questions? Don't be shy.
There's one, there's one there in the chat.
Okay.
And I recall reading something about this in the NOFO. What if you are within 30 miles of two facilities?
And so that happens quite a bit. So we have some counties overlap with two. I think I had a couple this year where there was 3 or 4 plants or coal mines that were within a 30-mile radius that closed for them. So if that happens when you're applying, just in that application portion, there's a question that's like, how are you eligible? Just put in both mines. And then we'll make sure to add that in when we're coming up with your allocation amounts.
Matthew, would they need letters of support from, if the mines were in 2 separate counties, they would likely need letters of support from both?
Yes, you would need letters of support from both. Sometimes we've had instances where one county is like, no, I'm going to be the lead host. I'm going to take advantage of this. And then the other county might be a little bit more, hey, you know what? You can take advantage of this opportunity as well. So it's just you can try both. I would just say try to get a letter of support from at least one of them.
Thank you, Matthew. And Mike, thanks for the question. Any additional questions? All right. Well, you all do know how to reach Matthew now. You know how to reach me. I will be sending up a follow-up email, hopefully tomorrow morning, that will include the recording, the links to the slides, and the links to our new websites that both detail information about this grant and other opportunities. So expect that follow-up email from me, and please do not hesitate to reach out to hop on a Zoom call together to talk about this grant and or some of those other opportunities I flashed up on the screen. I'm also happy. Randa's located in the Quincy area. I'm in Central Illinois. We're also happy to meet in person as time allows. So please do reach out. I've connected with a lot of you already, but really enjoy getting out and getting off Zoom screens. So please be in touch. Expect a follow-up email from me. Thank you, Matthew. Thank you, Courtney. Thanks, everybody who joined. We'll talk to you all later.